Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Peter Westerhouse. I'm the Chairman of Bathurst Resources. On behalf of the board, I'd very much like to welcome you along to this year's AGM. It's an absolute delight to be able to do it again in this face-to-face forum as opposed to the quite plastic sort of Zoom gatherings we had in the last couple of years. As there is a quorum present, I formally declare the meeting open. With me today is the rest of the board, which is Richard Tacon, the CEO, Chief Financial Officer and Finance Director Russell Middleton, and Non-Executive Director Francois Tumahai. Now, before I carry on, I might ask Francois to say a few words of welcome.
Aoraki matatu, titi o kai, titi o manawa, tihe mauri ora. A tuatahi ngā mihi ki te rongo rawa, a nana nei ngā mia katoa. I ngā mate ko wehe ki te Port Haere, a haere atu rā. Te hongo mate ki te hongo mate, te hongo ora ki te hongo ora, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā koutou katoa. Kia ora koutou, Francois Tumahai taku ingoa. And I've just done a quick greeting in Māori to welcome you all here. So welcome everyone. Kia ora, Pete.
Thank you. I should actually mention there's a number of shareholders have come a long way to be with us today, so I really appreciate you making the effort to come with us today. Also present is Mr. David Gates from our auditors, sitting in the back here with his head down. We also have a number of people from the media here. So this will be, whatever we say in this room will be recorded and reported. So be very careful at P's and Q's. Now there's also some issues around logistics and emergency. So I've got a standard statement here for this venue. So yeah, the bathrooms are outside, located at the far end of the lifts where you came in. In the event of an emergency, you'll hear an alarm. Please follow instructions from the staff team here. Leave the room via the main doors through which you entered. The staircase is around the corner or either end of the lifts, or on either of the lifts. Please use those and not the lifts in the event of an emergency. So you take the stairs. Don't take any food, drinks or personal possessions with you when exiting the building. Who wrote this? The assembly point is on the footpath on the terrace, away from the entrance of the building. Staff will check the room and offer assistance to those that need help to safely exit the building. You can't re-enter the building until the all clear has been given. If there's an emergency, dial 111. And the other point that I want to make is there is a first aid kit available on each floor. Please let us know if you have an incident or you require first aid. Okay, let me first run through a few of the logistical aspects of the meeting. So, the votes, there's a number of resolutions today that for which there will be voting. A couple of years ago, the Stock Exchange issued some new guidance notes regarding voting, and all voting is done by poll as opposed to by a show of hands. That's the change. So most of our the resolutions today are subject to these listing rules, and for that reason, all voting will be done by poll and not by a show of hands. Now on the screen behind me, you'll see as we go forward. I'll put these up at the time, but they'll see the votes that have been cast or that have been cast up to this point in time. And as we get the other polls today we've collected, we will tally them up, and at the end of the day we'll have those results as well. We do encourage questions today. We haven't received any to my knowledge, but I do strongly encourage you to ask any questions, of the board or of the auditors. And the other thing is we've got a number of people from our senior leadership team in the audience today, so we should be able to handle anything you throw our way. Any questions for auditors will be answered by David, and there'll be a summary Q&A that we will put on our website at the end of the day. I think we're very pleased that that Bathurst has reported excellent earnings for FY22, and that's FY22 finished a few months ago, and things are still looking very promising. There's demand for our coal, our products was maintained, and export coal sustained very good prices. Customers value high quality coking coal for steel making. The products we sell in the global market can't be substituted. It simply isn't possible, which is one of the reasons the prices have been where they are now for quite some time. You do remember that 2 years ago the benchmark coal price was at a very, very low point. But since then we had the Chinese embargo on Australian coal and government interventions. These all influence price movements, but and recently there's stuff going on in the war in Russia and Ukraine have made the global resources shortages even worse. But coal price, like any tradable commodity, any tradable good, is determined by supply and demand. And this is where we're starting to see, I think, that there's been not much investment in the coking coal, or in the coal industry. There's been an exit from the industry from very large companies that traditionally were in that space, and the fact that they're not investing, and nor are many other people, I think we're going to start to see even greater squeeze on supply and an imbalance between supply and demand. The issues around climate change, we do know that, and we observe this continues to accelerate, and obviously coal is an important part of that discussion. But at the same time, the planned transition in energy away from hydrocarbons towards other sources is going to require more steel. We just can't see how it's going to be done at this point in time, but it's good for us. More steel means more coking coal. General view is that between now and 2050, the demand for coking coal will go up by 30%. Blast furnace iron and steel making only works with coke, which comes from coking coal. Now you hear things about, green steel and all the rest of it. It's highly unlikely that that those technologies are going to be at economic scale within the next 25 years. It might work in a laboratory, but even the International Energy Agency say that by 2050, the amount of steel produced from green hydrogen will be around 10%. But even every other forecast that I've seen, they've always grossly exaggerated those things. So I think by 2050, the prediction of 10% green steel is going to be very difficult to achieve. Over time, the price, it's starting to come off a wee bit now, but I've been in the industry a long, long time, and I've seen this volatility many times. It's getting more volatile. As a small international player, we don't have very much influence over the price, but what we do have influence over is our cost of production and to maintain a margin. So, having good cost discipline over the long term is something that we are very conscious of and continue to do. 20% of our production is in New Zealand to domestic customers, which is in energy coal for energy and process heat. And their demand, our customers' demand for energy coal will remain in place until there's a viable, sufficient alternative energy source. and they choose to make the switch away from coal. Decarbonisation, our view is, must take place in a responsible, coordinated way. I think it's something that should be planned to take decades, and not the huge rush that, particularly in Australia and in New Zealand, where people are going towards just decarbonisation. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, and we acknowledge New Zealand's transition to a net zero carbon economy, and we will continue to support our customers as they adjust. What's taken up a lot of our time is the litigation. So this time last year, we were quite happy about the favourable Supreme Court decision in the L&M performance payment dispute. This is at that time the litigation had been going for 5 years. It really put a blanket on our share price. It continues to do so. It has certainly impacted our ability to raise capital. It has stifled strategies that we wish to implement. And it drew a lot of attention away from other things. As a chairman, I of course get involved in these things, but I'm absolutely mindful of the taxing effort that's been placed on Richard and Russell in particular. The attention that it's drawn from them has been huge. After that judgment last year, we saw a modest recovery in the share price, but unfortunately, despite this Supreme Court decision, L&M are having a second bite at trying. I just see it as them trying to lever money out of our business without doing any work, real work. What they're really doing is they're attacking the Supreme Court's judgment in a roundabout way, making allegations that we breached certain financial security undertakings. So that's highly disrespectful of the Supreme Court. We immediately set in place, again, they're spending a lot of time, to counter this completely baseless and allegation, vexatious and improper legal action. And that's been in the court 4 or 5 months ago. Yeah, so we're hopeful of we're very confident about that, but we're hopeful of a decision soon. And also at the same time, L&M chose to continue with the, what I call a frivolous change of control allegation. And we're committed to defend all our interests. Again, it's a fanciful and desperate attempt to try and generate a revenue stream for themselves out of us without doing any real work. Again, we're hopeful of a decision on that, shortly, hopefully before Christmas. Bathurst, we're a coal mining company, and I don't have any problem going to a barbecue and tell people I'm a coal miner. We're unashamedly a coal mining company. And we do expect that, given the domestic situation, that over time we'll become more and more coke and coal oriented. But we do see there's a global appetite for other minerals, and we are not sort of visibly active, but we are looking. We're looking at other opportunities, and we have very good skills in developing and operating mines safely and productively. So should opportunities come up in other commodities, we will certainly have a good look at those. But we'll be very sensible about it. So the priorities for us, from my perspective, for the next year will be obviously having to defend ourselves against these litigations, continue to strengthen our risk management frameworks, improving our capital structure, including the ability to pay dividends, and as I said, assessing additional investment opportunities. Before I wrap this part up, I want to say thank you to Richard and Russell and Francois, the senior management team who are mostly in the room today, and the entire workforce for their significant efforts. And Richard will talk a bit about some of the operational highlights and the very pleasing improvements we continue to make in the health and safety space and the environmental space. I thank our joint venture partners and our many shareholders for your ongoing support. Your input and support has been significant, important and much appreciated. So we now proceed to the formal part of the meeting to consider the resolutions. There's 6 of them. And at the conclusion of that, Richard will give a more detailed update on the company's operations and progress generally. And after that, we'll provide the indicative poll results on our resolutions before wrapping up the meeting. So the formal part of the meeting is there's an annual report, which includes the director's report and the auditor's report. And the annual report has been dispatched to shareholders who requested a copy. It's also available on our website, and I think there's a number of copies floating around the room here. The annual report, including the director's report and auditor's report for the year ending the 30th of June 2022, is now laid before the meeting. If there are any questions regarding any aspect of the annual report, I ask you to make those questions known now, and David Gates and others would respond to that. Any questions? Okay, no questions, we'll proceed. Now, this is where I stand aside for a moment, because Resolution 1 is in relation to my re-election as a non-executive director. And I do nominate myself. I'm happy to continue. I see it's an unfinished journey, and I look forward to continuing to serve the company.
Thank you, Peter.
Do you need this up, mate?
Yep, I will do that.
There we are.
Thank you. As Peter said, the first resolution is the re-election of Peter as a non-executive director, and obviously by default as chair, which has been decided by the board. Our recommendation is that the shareholders accept that recommendation and re-vote Peter. You see the proxies on the display before you. First of all, though, is there any other questions for around this resolution for the meeting or for Peter? We received no questions prior to the meeting, as Peter's already indicated. I think Peter's already had his say, unless there's something more you want to add, Peter? Okay, so because we're not doing show of hands, basically anyone that is voting by poll, record the for and against or abstain. Obviously, we see the proxy votes, which are transferring through to the chair, and we will come back towards the end of the meeting with a final count up of the poll plus the proxies. So, and that being concluded, we'll pass back.
So I think we move to resolution number 2. And this is the appointment and remuneration of our auditors. This order of business is a standing item and allows the board to appoint and remunerate KPMG. We haven't received any questions from shareholders in advance of this resolution. Any questions received during the meeting, and we answer them now, we'll disclose them on our website later today. So are there any other questions about this particular resolution? Votes, summary proxy votes are shown. No questions, thank you. We might go to the next one. Resolution 3 is performance rights for CEO Richard Tacon. So Richard, next item of business relates to the issuance of performance rights to Mr. Tacon. These have a service period of 3 years from the date of this AGM, and are subject to the company achieving between 10 to 15% total shareholder return annual growth rate. Again, I can confirm we have not received any questions. If there are any questions about that now, please put up your hand. Hello. I've got it. What's happened here?
No, one records it for the recording.
Oh, right.
Sorry.
It's on? Yeah, okay. Yeah, right. Okay, so no questions. We'll move to the next one. Resolution 4, performance rights for Russell Middleton. So again, this is a matter that relates to the issue of performance rights to Finance Director Mr Middleton. These also have a service period of 3 years from the date of this AGM and are subject to the company achieving between 10 and 15% TSR annual growth rate. We've had no questions. Have we got any other questions about that today? No. Thank you. This is where I stand aside again. This next one is in relation to Resolution 5, service rights for the Chairman.
Thank you, Peter. Again, we've received no questions prior to the meeting around this resolution. It relates to, as Peter said, the issuance of performance rights to Peter Westerhuis in his role as Chairman of the Board. Is there any other questions from the floor in relation to this resolution? Thank you. In that case then, can you please record on the poll, and as already indicated, the proxies are shown on the board. Thank you.
Okay, the last one, Resolution 6, which is approval of 10% placement capacity increase. The 6th order of business allows us to raise, should we need to, additional share capital without having to seek prior shareholder approval. Once again, we have not received any questions. If you have any questions about this particular resolution, please put them to the floor now. So as I said before, and as Richard said, if you haven't voted for this business, please do so now by filling out the poll form. So look, really that's the end of it. That completes the formal business of the meeting. Before I hand over to Richard to give a presentation on the lay of the land in the company, is there any other questions about any of this stuff? No?
Just, one thing of clarity, what we'll do now is Jared will just grab the poll box, and so anyone that has voted by poll during the meeting, that'll be collected. Jared will count that up and then compile the final vote so that towards the end of the meeting we will have a indication of the votes passed or non-passed. I don't imagine there's more than 49 million shares in the room, from my knowledge, voting against it, but we can indicate it.
Okay, well that's good. I'll hand over to Richard. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, everyone.